That evening, Woolsey Hall at Yale University was ablaze with light, packed with students and guests attending the event Unity for America's Future. On the podium, former President Barack Obama, with his warm, commanding voice, captivated every gaze. He called for unity, emphasizing that unity doesn't mean agreeing on everything, but listening to each other. The crowd erupted in thunderous applause, phones raised high, broadcasting every word to social media in an instant. Meanwhile, in a shadowed corner of the auditorium, John Kennedy, Louisiana senator, sat quietly, discreetly. He wasn't on the guest list, wasn't expected, and certainly wasn't welcome. Kennedy nearly blended into the darkness, forgotten, until he suddenly stood up. The faint creak of his chair drew a few turned heads. A student whispered, voice full of surprise, "Is that really Kennedy?" Security near the door immediately tensed, hands quickly moving to their radios, ready to respond. On the podium, Barack Obama continued his speech, unaware of the ripple of unrest spreading through the room. John Kennedy walked slowly down the aisle, the steady tap of his boots on the wooden floor echoing like a drumbeat signaling an impending battle. The audience's gaze shifted from curiosity to tension, all eyes fixed on him. An event staffer quietly signaled security to approach, and the atmosphere in the room grew stifling, heavy as if before a fierce storm. Before diving into the story, comment where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the latest stories. In a matter of moments, Woolsey Hall transformed into a smoldering powder keg, where every heart pounded, awaiting what would happen next. Barack Obama paused his speech, his eyes scanning the crowd before locking onto the uninvited man. Murmurs rose like ocean waves. A student in the middle row shakily recorded a video, fingers trembling on the phone screen, capturing the dramatic moment. Obama, with his characteristic calm demeanor, tilted his head, voice low but sharp. "Sir, I'm afraid you're not on the guest list. Please leave so we can continue." The words were polite but firm, like an unyielding command. Two security guards in black, earpieces faintly visible, began moving toward Kennedy from both sides of the auditorium. One whispered urgently into his radio, but Kennedy didn't stop. He walked toward a spare microphone at the corner of the stage, each step slow but resolute, as if calculated in advance. The crowd was divided. Some students leapt to their feet, cheering, while others shook their heads, murmuring about chaos. A professor in the front row frowned, clutching the event program tightly. Kennedy slowly approached the microphone, his hand lightly flipping the switch. The click echoed, shattering the oppressive silence in the room, like an undeniable declaration. He looked directly at Obama, his voice carrying the distinctive Louisiana drawl, rising and falling with a touch of rustic sarcasm. "Mr. Obama, I have no intention of ruining your fine party here, but when it comes to unity, I reckon I've got a few words worth considering." As soon as the words left his mouth, the auditorium erupted in a fierce reaction. Some burst into laughter, even letting out stifled giggles, while others whistled sharply in protest. In the third row, a young woman turned to her friend, her eyes blazing like a spark suddenly ignited. He actually dared to do it. Obama stood still, arms crossed, his piercing gaze fixed on Kennedy. He subtly signaled the security team to hold back, a small gesture radiating commanding authority, as if waiting to see where this confrontation would lead, whether it would reveal truth or merely devolve into a predictable performance. Kennedy slowly pulled a crumpled piece of paper from his coat pocket, his voice booming through the sound system as he held it up before the entire room. "These kids," he said, "are the conservative students at Yale who invited me here to speak honestly, to say things no one dares to say. But your organizers, afraid I'd ruin their perfectly scripted event, rejected that invitation. So tell me, Mr. Obama, what kind of unity is this?" Scattered applause broke out, mixed with angry boos from those who disagreed. A male student wearing glasses shouted loudly, "Speak, Senator, tell us." Meanwhile, another person in the corner muttered in frustration, "So disrespectful." The cameras of the student journalism team began panning, slowly capturing Kennedy's determined face, then Obama's cautious gaze, and back to the emotionally charged crowd, as if recording every vivid moment of this unprecedented debate. Kennedy stood tall, his eyes sweeping across the rows of seats, as if speaking directly to every person in the room. His voice slowed, each word deliberate and weighty. "I'm not here to cause trouble, or to create a scandal, or to stir things up. But if unity only means being allowed to say what you want to hear, if unity is hiding the truth under a glossy veneer, then that's not unity, that's control, That's blindfolding and silencing with flowery, empty words. His words struck like sharp arrows, piercing the hearts of those avoiding the truth. Some students leapt to their feet, clapping fervently as if affirming their agreement with his message, while others shook their heads, faces flushed with anger, unable to accept the harsh reality. The atmosphere in the room was electrified, a mix of tension and excitement, making everyone feel the power of words, the power of truth, of courage, and of a call for genuine unity, not a hollow pretense to maintain power or false safety. Kennedy took a deep breath, locking eyes with Obama once more, then spoke in a warmer tone, as if entrusting his faith in the future. We can be different, we can debate, we can even oppose each other, but let's not let our differences become a wall that divides us. Let them be a bridge to understanding and respect. That's true unity. Unity built on truth and freedom. The auditorium fell silent for a few seconds, then a wave of applause spread, growing louder, not only from supporters but also from some who had just opposed, seemingly unable to deny the power of those words. Obama, still standing at the podium, gave a faint smile, but his eyes betrayed tension. He stepped to the main microphone, his voice calm but tinged with challenge. Senator Kennedy, I respect your opinion, but this is a space for organized dialogue. If you want to debate, there are more appropriate venues. Obama's words were met with applause from half the room, but Kennedy remained unfazed. With all due respect, sir, Kennedy replied, his voice now laced with a hint of sarcasm. If you choose who gets to speak and who must stay silent, that's not dialogue, that's a script, and I'm not much for acting. The statement set the room ablaze. Cheers, boos, and laughter intermingled. Security drew closer, but Kennedy stood firm, gripping the microphone tightly. He stared directly at Obama, as if daring him to let the moment play out. An event organizer, face pale, rushed to whisper to a professor near the stage. The atmosphere in the room was now a powder keg, awaiting a single spark to explode. John Kennedy, still clutching the microphone, stood at the edge of chaos, his gaze sharp as a blade, sweeping over the seething crowd. Barack Obama, from the main podium, maintained an outward calm, but his hands subtly gripped the edge of the lectern, a rare sign of tension. Security stood frozen, their eyes darting between Obama and Kennedy, awaiting orders. Kennedy, his voice low but cutting, began. Mr. Obama speaks of unity, and who doesn't want that? But what kind of unity is it when you decide who speaks and who stays silent? The room erupted, applause mixed with jeering whistles of protest. A student in the middle row shouted, "Keep going." Another muttered, "So rude." Kennedy didn't waver. He leaned into the microphone, as if willing each word to etch itself into everyone's minds. You organized this event, hand-picked the guests, filtered the questions, he said, holding up the crumpled paper again. These kids wanted me here, wanted a real debate. But you said no, afraid the truth would mess up your pretty script. The crowd roared again, some students leaping to their feet. Under the soft golden glow of the lights flickering like a fire, Kennedy lowered his voice, speaking slowly, like a storyteller by a campfire. Unity isn't when everyone bows their heads in agreement, nor is it brushing aside differences to maintain a superficial harmony. True unity is when we have the courage to hear opinions that make us uncomfortable, words that make us want to turn away and run. Without that, what you call unity is just tyranny dressed in a fine suit, masking the suffocation, stifling the voice of freedom. His words landed like a slow-burning bomb, silencing the room for a moment before it erupted into conflicting reactions. From one corner, vigorous applause rang out, fueling his message. But on the other side, angry boos were no less intense. An elderly professor, hair white as snow, shook his head slightly, scribbling every word in a notebook as if to preserve the unfolding debate. Obama stepped closer to the microphone, his eyes fixed on Kennedy, his voice warm but sharp. "Senator," he began, "I fully agree that debate is essential for a free and progressive society, but disrupting an event, interrupting a discussion, is not the way to show respect or seek truth." Obama's words sparked a gentle wave of applause from part of the audience, as if in agreement with his call for civility and order. However, Kennedy only smiled, a smile half sarcastic, half defiant, as if saying, "Let me keep going." He turned, his voice carrying a touch of mockery and resolve. "Disrupting. When an ordinary person speaks up and gets silenced, you call it order. When I stand here saying things you don't want to hear, you call it disruption. But I don't call it that. I call it truth. And truth always makes people uncomfortable, even want to run away. The auditorium erupted once more, fervent cheers mixing with angry protests, creating a suffocating, breathless atmosphere. An event organizer, face flushed with pressure, hurriedly whispered to a nearby security guard, intending to intervene to restore order, but Obama, with a subtle yet firm gesture, signaled them to stop. He wanted to hear everything Kennedy had to say. Sensing the focus on him, Kennedy raised his voice, each word ignited with the fire in his heart. "I'm not standing here to be a hero or a troublemaker. I'm standing here for these kids." He gestured toward the young crowd watching intently. "For their future. For those who deserve to hear the truth, not a pre-scripted narrative. If you think the truth is a nuisance, a threat, then the problem isn't me. The problem is you don't have the courage to face it." His words swept through the room like a fierce wind, waking people from the long slumber of pretense and deception. Perhaps this was the true voice of democracy, not to appease or please, but to challenge, to awaken, and to unite on the foundation of truth, no matter how bitter. The crowd was now a roaring ocean. A male student in a Yale hoodie stood, raising a fist in support. Another girl near the stage recorded a video, tears glistening in her eyes. The student journalism team's cameras panned back and forth, capturing every moment. A teaching assistant whispered to a colleague, "This is going to be big." Kennedy, sensing security approaching, stepped back but held onto the microphone. "One last thing," he said, his voice now like a proclamation. "If unity means staying silent before the truth, I'd rather be escorted out than bow my head." He set the microphone down, the click resounding like a full stop. Security immediately moved in, one guard grasping his arm, leading him toward a side exit. The crowd split, half erupting in thunderous applause, the other half booing, demanding order. As Kennedy disappeared behind the door, chants of "Speak freely" still echoed. Phones across the auditorium lit up, posts flooding the internet. One student tweeted, "Kennedy just shook Yale." A 15-second video clip capturing his line about tyranny in a fine suit was shared hundreds of times within minutes. Obama stood silently on the podium, his gaze following the aisle where Kennedy had exited, his face a portrait of calm mixed with contemplation. Just hours after John Kennedy was escorted out of Woolsey Hall, the atmosphere outside Yale's auditorium remained electric, like a smelting furnace. Students gathered in clusters debating heatedly, their phones glowing with freshly recorded videos. A 20-second clip, Kennedy at the microphone declaring, "Unity without truth is just tyranny in a fine suit," spread across social media platforms like a wildfire. Mainstream media quickly jumped in. Fox News ran a headline, "Senator Kennedy challenges Obama, defends free speech." CNN called it a political stunt disrupting a unity event. Commentators were divided. Some hailed Kennedy as a hero for speaking bluntly. Others criticized him as an opportunist using Obama's stage to boost his profile. An MSNBC analyst remarked, "This isn't free speech, it's pointless disruption." Meanwhile, TikTok exploded with reaction videos. A Yale student with dyed green hair posted an analysis. "Kennedy's right. If you only invite people who agree with you, that's not unity." The video racked up millions of views. But another clip from a different student condemned him. He disrupted a safe space. Obama deserved respect. The social media war became a battleground, with opinions clashing fiercely. Obama, sensing the media storm, posted a statement, "Unity requires dialogue but also order. We can debate without disruption." The post garnered thousands of likes but also comments like, "Your order is silencing others." Obama's supporters fired back. Kennedy had no right to derail the event. The online dispute spread, drawing in celebrities and politicians. Kennedy, in stark contrast to the noise, maintained a stunning silence. He gave no interviews, posted nothing, and was only seen in a hastily snapped photo, leaving Yale, his expression calm, hands in pockets. This reticence made him stand out even more. The storm wasn't confined to social media. At cafes near Yale, students debated passionately. A group at Book Trader Cafe shared Kennedy's clip on their phones. "He said what everyone thinks but won't say," one student remarked. Another countered, "He just wanted to stir trouble for headlines." A notable moment came when a Yale student claiming to be part of the group that invited Kennedy posted a long thread. She detailed how the organizers pressured the group to withdraw the invitation. They said Kennedy would destabilize things. But destabilize what? Their control. The thread went viral, catching the eye of investigative journalists. An article in The Atlantic analyzed The Yale incident shows universities grappling with free speech. On TikTok, a new trend emerged. Students filmed short videos standing in front of fake microphones, repeating Kennedy's words. One standout video from a Berkeley student bore the caption, "If truth is disruption, then I choose disruption." The video was shared widely, garnering millions of views. Commentators began calling it the Kennedy moment, a symbol of resistance against ideological control. Meanwhile, some Yale professors spoke out. One wrote on the university's blog, "This event shows we need to rethink how we organize debates." But another, on a podcast, called Kennedy's actions irresponsible, arguing he destroyed a chance for real dialogue. Both views were widely quoted, fueling the debate further. As night fell, Speak Freely became a movement. Posts about being censored at school, work, or online spread everywhere. One user wrote, "I was fired for speaking a differing opinion. Kennedy spoke for me." Another shared, "My school banned conservative speakers. This isn't unity." These stories, like stones thrown into a lake, created endless ripples. The media storm from the Yale incident didn't subside but turned into a blaze, spreading from phone screens to college campuses across America. Within days, universities from the East Coast to the West Coast were shaken by waves of protests, debates, and calls for reform. At Stanford, a group of students occupied the main quad, holding handmade banners, "Free speech or nothing." They held an open mic event where anyone could speak, from conservatives to progressives. An engineering student, voice trembling but resolute, shared how a professor told him to stop debating for being off message. His story was recorded, went viral on TikTok, and sparked thousands of supportive comments. "Speak Freely is for people like him," one user wrote. In Berkeley, known for its student movements, a larger protest unfolded. Hundreds marched through Sproul Plaza, chanting "Let us speak." An online petition demanding the university revise its guest speaker policies collected over 10,000 signatures in a week. A senior student, standing on the steps of the administration building, declared, "If Yale can silence Kennedy, who's next?" Her words, recorded, became a rallying cry for the movement. John Kennedy, reluctantly at the center, remained silent. He declined all interview requests, appearing only briefly in a grainy video leaving a Louisiana grocery store, sporting his familiar half-smirk. His absence amplified the movement's momentum. A post read, "Kennedy doesn't need to go on TV. He lit the spark, now we keep it burning." Shared thousands of times, it featured images of students protesting at UCLA. Barack Obama, feeling the pressure from the movement, spoke in a brief podcast interview. "I believe in open dialogue," he said, his voice calm. "But we need spaces where people feel safe to debate." He acknowledged the Yale incident had sparked an important discussion, but stressed that unity remained the ultimate goal. The movement didn't stop with college students. At high schools, students began questioning speech censorship policies. A group in Chicago held an online symposium, inspired by Kennedy, inviting controversial speakers. A 16-year-old declared, "If adults are afraid to debate, we'll do it." The video, posted on TikTok, racked up millions of views. Universities started to yield. Stanford announced an open forum policy, committing to invite speakers from all sides. Berkeley revised its rules, demanding transparency in guest selection. Some schools, like NYU, held workshops on free speech, though they faced pushback from faculty who claimed the movement was destabilizing. A Yale professor, in an article for the Chronicle of Higher Education, admitted, "We've grown too comfortable controlling the narrative." But not everyone supported Kennedy. A group of Yale students held a press conference, apologizing for the disruption at Obama's event. "We want unity, not division," one said. Their words were mocked, with comments calling it cowardice. A post read, "Apologizing for the truth? Pathetic." Meanwhile, some commentators labeled Kennedy a troublemaker, accusing him of exploiting students to push a conservative agenda. As the movement spread, one thing was clear: the Yale incident had awakened a generation of students unwilling to stay silent. They didn't just demand the right to speak, but also the right to hear opposing views, uncomfortable truths. And though Kennedy remained in the shadows, his image standing at the microphone challenging an entire auditorium became their rallying flag. The wave continued to surge across campuses, but like all movements, it faced fierce headwinds. John Kennedy, reluctantly a symbol, now faced a storm of criticism, from personal attacks to legal threats, while the student movement endured pressure from those seeking to extinguish the fire he had sparked. Just days after the Yale incident, a group of lawyers representing the event organizers sent Kennedy a warning letter, accusing him of trespassing and disturbing public order. A major outlet ran a headline, "Kennedy may face lawsuit for disrupting Obama event." Though no formal lawsuit emerged, the news sparked debate. One user wrote, "They want to silence Kennedy with the law. Sad." Another countered, "He brought it on himself. Nobody invited him." Meanwhile, the Yale students who invited Kennedy faced consequences. One, under pressure from administration, withdrew from the student council. Another received anonymous threatening letters, prompting her to temporarily lock her accounts. But they weren't entirely alone. Another group of Yale students held a small rally, openly supporting Kennedy, displaying a banner, "Truth doesn't need permission." The image, shared online, inspired student groups from NYU to Texas A&M. Kennedy, despite the controversy surrounding him, remained defiant. In a rare moment caught on camera, when a reporter asked if he regretted the Yale incident, he shrugged. "Regret? I just said what needed saying. The rest is up to others to decide." The brief but sharp remark became a new slogan, printed on t-shirts and banners at protests. Despite mounting pressure, from lawsuits to personal attacks, Kennedy and the student movement stood firm. The Yale incident, now more than just an event, was a turning point where young people decided they would no longer stay silent. And amid the darkness of the assaults, the Speak Freely flame still burned, awaiting the day it would blaze even stronger. A year after the seismic event at Yale, John Kennedy's name was no longer just that of a Louisiana senator, but a symbol of a transformative era in debate culture. The Speak Freely movement, sparked by the moment he gripped the microphone to confront Barack Obama, had left an indelible mark on college campuses and society's view of free speech. The Yale incident wasn't a fleeting moment, but a milestone, etched into books and the minds of a generation. Universities, once bastions of tightly controlled speech, began to change. Harvard launched a free forum, allowing students to invite speakers from all perspectives without prior administrative approval. Berkeley introduced new guidelines, mandating transparency and selecting public event guests. Even smaller schools like Amherst held uncensored debates, where students faced opposing views head-on. An Amherst student, in a piece for the school paper, remarked, "We're no longer afraid of disagreement. That's the lesson from Yale." Kennedy's line, "Unity without truth is just tyranny in a fine suit," became an enduring slogan. It appeared in political science textbooks, was embossed on the cover of a collection of essays on free speech, and even printed on posters hung at student forums. A Stanford professor, in a lecture, called it a reminder that truth, however hard to hear, is the foundation of all genuine dialogue. Kennedy, though central to the movement, kept his distance. He rarely mentioned Yale, offering only brief, folksy responses when pressed by the media. In a rare instance, when a student at a Louisiana event asked about Speak Freely, he shrugged. "I just said what I saw. You young folks did the rest." That simple reply, recorded and posted, reinforced his image as someone indifferent to fame, but unwittingly a torchbearer. Barack Obama, with his usual finesse, gradually shifted his stance. In a speech at an education conference, he acknowledged the value of unfiltered debates. "We learn the most when we face ideas that make us uncomfortable." Though he didn't mention Kennedy directly, the statement was seen as a tacit nod to the Speak Freely movement. Some applauded, but others remained skeptical. Nice words, but will he follow through? The Yale incident became a case study in classrooms. From political science to media studies, students dissected every angle, from how Kennedy challenged power to how social media amplified his message. An NYU professor designed an entire course around the event, titled Free Speech in the Digital Age. The student in the class wrote on a blog, "Yale taught me that one person, one moment can change an entire system." Beyond college campuses, the movement's legacy rippled into broader society. Tech companies, long criticized for content censorship, began hosting workshops on free expression. Some NGOs launched initiatives to support silenced voices. One project, called Mic for All, founded by a group of Yale alumni, provided an online platform for users to share opinions without fear of deletion. Inspired by Kennedy, the project quickly attracted thousands of participants. Not all changes were smooth, however. Some universities resisted the movement, with faculty arguing that free speech shouldn't override psychological safety. These debates persisted, but change had begun, like an unstoppable river. A New York Times article observed, "The Yale incident was a wake-up call. We cannot build unity by silencing dissent." Kennedy, though not seeking the spotlight, remained a haunting figure. A mural at a Texas university depicted him at a microphone, with "Speak Freely" written below. He never commented on the mural, but when a reporter asked, he just grinned. "I look better in real life." That humor, paired with his resolve, kept his legacy alive. As universities grew more open, as students stopped fearing to speak truth, the Yale incident was seen as a turning point. It not only reshaped how schools handled debates, but also sparked a new belief that truth, however hard, is always worth fighting for. In the new free forum springing up everywhere, Kennedy's spirit, humble yet unyielding, quietly led the way. The Yale incident, like a stone tossed into a lake, created ceaseless ripples, spreading from Woolsey Hall to the farthest corners of society. A year later, as the dust settled, the story of John Kennedy challenging Barack Obama was not just a memory, but a reminder of the power of voice and the cost of silence. The Speak Freely movement, having reshaped the university landscape, left a lingering question for all. When faced with pressure, what will you choose? Picture that moment when Kennedy, a plain man in worn boots, stepped out from the shadows of the back row, facing the stage lights and the eyes of the entire auditorium. He had no script, no guarantees, only the conviction that the truth needed to be spoken. That simple yet bold act ignited a movement, shaking the walls of control in universities and beyond. But the question wasn't just for Kennedy. It was for everyone who witnessed, everyone who heard this story. One evening at Yale, a year later, a freshman stood before a microphone in a newly formed free forum. The young woman, hands trembling slightly, looked out at the crowd, unfamiliar faces, expectant eyes. She shared how she'd been told to stay quiet in a class discussion because her views differed. "I was scared," she said, her voice carrying through the speakers. "But then I remembered someone who stood right here, daring to speak when the world wanted him silent." The crowd fell silent, then erupted in applause, as if Kennedy's spirit lived on in every word she spoke. Unity, as Obama once called for, is a noble ideal, but what does unity mean if it demands you bury your opinions, swallow the truth? Kennedy, with his unexpected act, forced an entire nation to confront that question. He didn't provide the answer but left each person to find their own. A teacher at a high school in Ohio, inspired by the Yale incident, began letting students debate freely, even on controversial topics. When the stage lights at Woolsey Hall dimmed, when the posts quieted, the question lingered. It wasn't just for those in the auditorium that day, but for all of us. When you stand before a microphone, whether a real one or just a moment in life, when pressure weighs heavy, when silence is the easy choice, what will you do? Will you bow your head or will you speak, voice trembling, even if the world turns its back? The answer is yours alone. The story of John Kennedy confronting Barack Obama at Yale, with the Speak Freely movement at its core, reflects a deeply divided America today, where free speech is both a right and a battleground. Kennedy, with his worn boots and folksy drawl, dared to step up to the microphone uninvited, challenging Obama's idea of unity when it masked control. His line, "Unity without truth is just tyranny in a fine suit," reminds us that truth, however hard to hear, is the foundation of dialogue. The Speak Freely movement, spreading from social media to campuses like Stanford and Berkeley, shows the power of youth in demanding the right to speak and hear opposing views. But the story also reveals the cost. Kennedy faced criticism and legal threats while Yale students endured pressure from their school. In today's America, where social media amplifies disputes and schools grapple with free speech, the lesson from this story is dare to speak the truth, but brace for the consequences. When you speak out like the freshman at Yale's free forum, voice shaky but resolute, you're not just fighting for yourself but for all those silenced. Choose your moment and words wisely, as Obama adjusted his stance on dialogue, but don't let fear stop you. In work, school, or family, learn from Kennedy. Truth is worth the risk, but it demands courage and responsibility. And as the story's final question asks, when pressure hits, will you stay silent or dare to stand before the microphone, even if only in your heart? Subscribe to the channel to spread the Speak Freely spirit and explore more inspiring stories. Thank you for joining us. See you in the next video.